working now. Right, brilliant. Technical issues. I don't know if you just heard me swigging from my coffee there, but I think we're live. Lucy, can you hear me? She's hiding out in the lobby there. I'm going to be bringing her in shortly. Lucy, if you can hear me, then wave. Yeah, she can. Oh, good. Right, this is where you need to help me out, guys. In the chat function, tell me if you can hear me. Tell me if we're live. I got told that the video function was working again on Restream, so I played a video and then it's just completely crashed my computer. So I'm getting a thumbs up from Kath Piper. Thank you so much, Kath. Really appreciate it. Here we go. Let's get cracking then. Sorry about that. Eating into our precious time to chat to Lucy Macdonald, which I don't want. Right, I feel naked. Let me get me little frame up. Right, got me bearings now. How we doing? Another week. We did an event on Saturday. Thanks for joining us for that. Pelvic health, lots of women's health chat. I moderated a couple of debates. We've got one that really sticks out. Dr. Izzy Moore, we're talking about the lack of female-based research and stuff, which was fascinating. So there was definitely, that was one of many sessions of which there was some really interesting sort of women's issues, feminist sociology type stuff coming up. And so just completely coincidentally, it's now International Women's Day, and a good friend of mine, increasingly, I won't burden her with being a good friend of mine, maybe an increasing a close acquaintance, and see if she'll call me a friend. Lucy Macdonald is joining me today's show, in part because she pitched it me. I wanted her on the show, someone I massively look up to, particularly in the sort of MSK business sense, as well as the clinical ethics. She's just a top drawer. So I always wanted her on the show. But then when we knew we were going to do this in some time in some weeks, and then she sort of pitched me this, what about International Women's Day? Let's bring these issues forward. I've got some stories to tell. And she did just that on YouTube video that's in the comments on the links for the description for this live stream today. And it was absolutely brilliant video of which she sort of bears all and shares what must have been difficult for her. And so I want to talk to her a little bit about that and the issues that she raised, but also for her to have a platform to speak her mind on these important issues on an important day. So hopefully, if the technology works and behaves itself, I can bring you Lucy Macdonald. Lucy, is it working?
No, it is. Looks like it is, which is great.
Good. Yeah, that was worrying, wasn't it? Was it just me that froze, or did it all freeze?
I've no idea. As far as I was concerned, I could hear you. It was just it's working now. That's the main thing.
Honestly, I'm probably just gulping my coffee really loudly through the microphone and thought it wasn't live. Anyway, we're here now. It looks like it's working. Thanks so much for joining me today. You posted a video this morning about issues of which we talked about at length last week, and that you had sort of said, let's bring this forward. No better time. And I'm so glad we're able to do this. But can we jump straight into that then, and sort of talk about, before we maybe get into the issues, but why is it you felt you really wanted to raise them?
So yeah, and thanks so much for having me here talking about this, Jack. It is a difficult subject, irrespective of which side you're hearing it from, and I appreciate that. So yeah, for a long time, my lifetime, I've had this kind of, as one of my female colleagues said, like a background of seething from all the multitude of things that happen, both on a professional level and on a personal level too. And every year that International Women's Day passes, I think I must do something, and then of course I'm too busy, too afraid, and I don't do it. And this year there were a couple of events that happened this week. Last week. So I started the week, something triggered me, and I felt, okay, this isn't great, and I responded in my usual way. And then something else happened, and by the time I realized it was Monday and it was going to be International Women's Day, I thought, right, instead of waiting for this anger to pass and then just getting on with my day, I'm going to pick up the phone to Jack Chew. And so I did. I went, International Day Monday, and here we are. So thank you for supporting that decision.
Well, I want to act on those impulses, because if there is as brilliant as that conversation was, then please do it more often. I mean, amusingly, I just got back from a run and I therefore didn't shower that morning. So the people that I interacted with later that day won't thank you for it. But that conversation was brilliant. So yeah, I think that's something that's interesting, because it's certainly not just a moment in time of which, it's something that had really, it almost like felt like the straw that broke the camel's back, really, for you. You felt like there were several different things that had occurred that had bothered you, and it felt like it was something that therefore met a threshold for you to say, no, this is something I want to talk about, I'm passionate about.
Yeah, and I think also this year, a really significant component of it as well is that this year has been rubbish in many ways, but has been amazing in the connections that I've made, and have the depth of the connections that I may have had before, but have become a lot stronger. Right. And therefore I've had more individuals that have really inspired me to as my fabulous friend Leanne Anton often says, step into my power. And I think those individuals have either inspired me in the way that they have conducted themselves, in the case of Leanne, for example, and also just more sort of subtle ways, like people like you and Gemma and huge numbers of people that have really helped me to recognise my value and give me the confidence to step forwards.
No, that's interesting, and I hadn't really thought about how the timing of what's been going on and the relevant differences that the pandemic has brought, both professionally and personally, for us all. I hadn't realised just how that would be prescient, and that's a great point. And I suppose, I think there's a lot for me to reflect on there in terms of the depths that we're managing to achieve, and also just often because of a bad thing, we've ended up having sometimes a bit more time to just spend. I don't know about me and you, but our diaries perhaps have just allowed that flexibility to get stuck into some of not just this stuff, but also various other things that we have in common clinically outside of social issues. We've been able to maybe flex that and get to know each other better. Certainly, me and you. So I really appreciate it. How tough was it this morning when did you do the piece to camera? When was it you filmed it? Because I know you put it up this morning. Yesterday. How was that? How was that for you?
So it obviously wasn't the first take that I did. So unlike most of the videos I do, that are about physio related things, I don't write a script. I might sort of do a really scruffy looking, what's the word I'm looking for, spider diagram, and then sort of stick it somewhere near my camera and then just blur. With this, I literally sat down and wrote, I think it was about 3 pages of A4 and really spelt it all out, because it very much wasn't comfortable. and I went through it, and obviously I made loads of changes, and then I tried to do it. The first take was terrible, next take, and then in the end I just went, right, this isn't perfect, and there are probably elements that if I had time to edit it I'd like to take out, but do you know what, I'm just going to do it, because tomorrow is the day and I need to just get it done, and I've got a million other things to do, so just do it. Just go.
But that's part of the theme, though, right? So I thought you might say that, and to be honest, I didn't know how many takes you'd done. But it kind of tickles me, because when we first spoke, a few months back, maybe, or weeks, but it's that you talk a lot about the fact that you're wanting to empower and instill confidence in yourself and others, and rightly so. And I think it was a core message of your video. But it's something that from your work and me admiring it, and you've inspired various different things we've done in our business, as the way that you go about things, is that your piece to camera sort of eloquence and ability to do that at a speed. You're one of the few people talks about as fast as me as well. It means that you're clearly thinking sharp, you're speaking sharp, it feels quite natural. It was really interesting to me that underneath that there is still that lack of confidence that sometimes means that you for me, that was such a perfect and polished video. I'd be proud of that as a final draft, full stop. But that seems to be a relevant thing to the message within the video as well, is that you feel that sometimes there's that, it is good enough, you are good enough, put yourself forward, and that is the stand up and be counted sort of conclusion to part of your message.
Yeah.
Glad I got it. Brilliant. Yeah, that's me making the mistake of now speaking for Lucy. What, 5-10 minutes into this show? Brilliant. Sorry about that.
No, it isn't. It's not a mistake. You hit the nail bang on the head. You're being empathetic, and you hit it.
Oh, lovely. So I'm glad that you did it, and I'm glad that you raised it. I think one of the big challenges for this is that one of the reasons people struggle to bring some of this forward is often that they feel that that it inherently has to be representative of the whole, and sometimes that people feel that bringing forward personal stories and anecdotes is sometimes people suggest or feel like it's going to be self-indulgent, or that people won't be interested, or people wouldn't recognize it, or if they don't recognize it in themselves, then that makes it somehow less valid. And so all of that is to me a nonsense, because each individual person's stories and take on the matter is incredibly important, even on a subjective level. But as you mentioned, having spoken to others, and also from the stories that you're telling on that video, it's like you're one of several that have raised that with me even recently, and certainly ongoing. If we go back, so what features of bringing these things forward do you think really you want to highlight as being the sort of confidence-based features that you wanted to really champion by doing the video?
I think the thing that's the most important is what we can do about it. So is how we can all raise each other up. And it's not just women. And obviously there is this gender component that obviously we're talking about today, and I talked about in the video, but I see no reason why we can't do it with everyone. So there's no reason why we can't go about seeking out the voices of others who may not be as confident as us. So just like we would at a meeting, you wouldn't sit around a table and allow the two most loud people just to dominate the meeting. You would hope that we would all sit there and try and draw out opinions out of others. And I guess there's no reason why we can't do that on social media and within other aspects of our lives and our careers.
Yeah, I think that's and it's interesting for me when I reflect on the fact that there's various different things that I do, but devout attention seeker and broadcaster in that way, loudmouth, both in actual volume and in terms of amount that I broadcast. And so it helps me to reflect on the fact that drawing on other voices and getting the true experts in the room to actually share that and use our platforms to that greater good is really important. But sometimes it's knowing where to make sure you hand the microphone over, where to shine a light on great things and great practice and great people and stuff. It's like what I'm passionate about, and I don't always toe that line well, but you really navigated in that video a sort of space where everything was driving towards the solutions.
Yeah, I sorry, just to interject that, I do think you do that well. I think that's exactly what you do. I think you bringing voices in is exactly what you're all about, and I don't think you need to. I know you often say, "Oh, I'm a talk a lot and blah blah blah," but you also ask a lot of opinion. You're very open-minded to other people's opinions. You're constantly evolving. My perception of you is that you're constantly evolving your opinions. You're constantly listening out and trying to understand and trying to empathize. And I think that that's all that any of us can do. So we're all on a journey, and I know I mentioned this before we went live, but for example, for me with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, I know that my opinions, behaviors, words have very much changed. My understanding has changed over the past year, and I have no doubt that it will continue to do so as I reflect on my own behaviors, listen to others, try and empathize. And I think that's all we can do in life. We can't suddenly be perfect. No one is. So
it's false and disingenuous, isn't it, if anyone was to try to be that, or try to do that as if you can learn something and then act on it in real time in such a way that it would be disingenuous to ever come across as that, and people therefore start acting and stop being authentic, and that's counterproductive to what you're trying to encourage people to do, which is actually be themselves. I can't help myself but to show you these as well. Talking of, I know that Leanne's just commented and you quoted her, and she's now posted that, and absolutely you should step into your power. I can't help myself but say, and I don't know what she's got planned for tomorrow, but Leanne Antoine's takeover show is tomorrow. It's the second Tuesday of the month, and so I want to just to give a little bit of a clue as to just the influence that she's having on the Tune It Over brand. Is that is occurring, and there will be more of that hopefully to come tomorrow.
Amazing.
So yeah, we'll tune into Leanne's show tomorrow. I don't know what she's got in store, but no doubt it will be brilliant. Now, what of the? I don't want to do too much of a spoiler for the video that people need to watch in its purest form, and certainly not have me on screen for it. But what let's flag a couple of things within it that you feel like you want to emphasize. What experiences have you encountered in your career that you wanted to sort of flag as being not okay and something we need to work on and be better at?
So I think that there are probably themes within the video that that I could probably draw on. The first one is probably things that people would recognize as offensive. So I think a lot of people would consider some of the incidences where it's quite clear that there's some sexual objectification going on. So I think the bikini incident where someone basically, I was introduced to a referrer, and he commented when he found out that my business was called Octopus Clinic. He commented that, but I should have called my business Octopussy, and then I could have turned up wearing a bikini. Now I literally just met this guy. He was a slightly older guy, very much in a position. He was the host of the event, so very much in a position of authority between us. It was not someone that as I say, it wasn't like a friend making the context, which is important, was such that it was a very inappropriate comment. And when I reflected on back to him, so I said to him something like, you do realize you've just suggested that I turn up to networking events wearing a bikini, to maybe make him realize, oh gosh, I've just said something that was probably a bit rude. Just went straight over his head. And it does make it harder. It does make you less likely to want to go to those kind of events, and it does make you feel like you're going to have to work extra hard to get the recognition that you feel that you deserve for your professional skills and your professional knowledge, if the first thing that they're thinking about is that kind of thing. So that's an example, I think, of what that area. So that's kind of one part of it. And then the other part of it is the much more subtle things that actually, they're not that subtle, I suppose.
I was wondering what you were going to say. What the hell was subtle?
Well, they're just so frequent that it becomes something that you just sort of learn to get on with. Like all the comments that, a consultant will come and talk to some of our team, and there'll be a lot of comments about who is attractive. I mean, or other clinics and clinicians who are attractive, and you just think, you don't get that sort of stuff about male clinicians. I've never heard a male clinician being judged by how attractive they are, well, in a professional perspective anyway. So why would that be appropriate for women? But yes, it's so common that you almost have to sit back and really think, okay, allow myself to remember those times, because you don't particularly want to remember them either, because they're just not very comfortable.
No, I see what you mean. I think just on the one of the things I'm conscious of when you, especially let's focus on that first story, one of several in your video, sort of mortifying, overt, misogynistic behaviour that's so inappropriate, full stop, but then professionally inappropriate in such a bizarre level. Like it's a forwardness and a familiarity that's just sort of bizarre to me, and I cringe so hard at it. But then a part of me, potentially self-preservation, which I don't like in myself, is maybe thinking like my generation would just be more mortified. We'll look on at that. I can just imagine that older generation being like that, like the old Bond films where you just can't believe what you're looking at and stuff like that. But I do wonder, like I don't mean to think like that because I'm trying to give my generation a pass. And we make, no doubt similar or mistakes in different ways, but it's just like that overt nature. I can't help but at least know my visceral reaction to it, and I know many of my male friends to that would just be like find it bizarre and would call that out in real time. And no doubt, it's one of my favorite hobbies really, is to then humiliate said individual. If I ever come across it, it's quite fun. But am I naive in saying that there has been progress in that direction? And am I giving myself and mine too much of a pass if I think like that?
No, I think you're right. I think that it's really, really good news that definitely there's positive progression. So without doubt, there have been improvements. And looking at the generational component, that there is that there. I think there's definitely still people our age who I've just aged you by 10 years. But that still behave in those ways. I think, the fact we're having this conversation, that as far as I'm aware wasn't had 10 years ago. Mind you, there weren't the platforms to have them. So maybe with social media, there's the potential that nice steady curve of improvement will suddenly get a bit steeper. So here's hoping.
No, I think that's something that I really do want to make sure that progress, that arc of progress continues, but also that we don't become complacent on it, or that I don't then create space in which everyone gets a pass because things are moving in the right direction, and therefore you could think that there are other areas of which that are less overt potentially that therefore need to be worked upon. On the other side of it, the more subtle comments, that was fascinating to me, and I'm happy to bring up as well. Before we went on air, Lucy's video was quite exposing to me, especially towards the end where she was making suggestions. I'm like, right, which of these tripwires might I have set off, with regards to some of the more subtle aspects of it? And so, for example, you'd mentioned, don't call women girls. You'd mentioned about any reference is inappropriate to professionally reference attractiveness, and that is therefore not, especially because that's often so gendered, and I get that. So when it came to that, I sort of came on the conversation just before we went on air and just said, like, right, interestingly, like which of these mistakes might I have made, and particularly around the girls thing. Right? I just want to sort of hone in on that. Is that's definitely sort of a thing that I can imagine in a different context me making. It sounds like maybe I haven't done with you, but certainly that for me, I always saw as being, it could be patronizing, but then it's often a self-title for many women, and I probably therefore, if I'm parroting their language, I can imagine myself doing that, including, I'd even say, with patients. So I was sort of thinking like, well, how many mistakes am I making? So we then had a quick chat with it, and you reassured me on a few things. But I was wondering if you could expand on that point that you made, because you made it quite firmly in the video.
Yeah. So one of the lovely things that happened was I got, after I shared that video, was I got a message from someone who's been very supportive of me, and he said, Lucy, I realised that I've definitely called you girl before, and I'm really sorry. I didn't realise that this was offensive, and I'm going to reflect on things. And my response to him is my response to you as well. I mean, I don't recall you calling me girl, but that aside, there are a lot of people will use that term as like a turn of phrase. Now, like all of these things, there is a really, really important context. Now, for a start, it's just one small thing, and it's not like I'm going to judge someone. I'm not going to say, oh, this person just called me girl, right? That's it. They're a misogynist pig. No, of course not. So it's within the context of other behaviors as well, and also where you are. So there might be times where, as you say, if you're parroting a friend, like, I don't know, if someone's just said, oh, I'm gonna going out with the girls tonight, it would be totally appropriate for you to say, oh, have a great time with the girls tonight. So
that's kind of what I mean. Yeah, it's a good example.
So, but like with all of these things, there are subtleties, and it's really important to understand those subtleties. And the same with any discrimination type discussions. You've always got to think of context. Without it, it's impossible conversation. It's utterly pointless conversation. The reason I said don't call women girls is that if in doubt, just don't. I mean, it's a bit like anything, isn't it? Like, if you're not sure, just don't do it. It's not required. You don't, you always use the word woman. It's not, so I just kind of think sometimes if you just go for the easy approach of just saying, I'm just going to call female adults women, then that kind of solves the issue.
Err on the side of caution with strangers. Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
Why not? Because some women aren't going to be at all offended. I know that there's loads of people that refer to themselves and their female friends as girls and wouldn't feel at all offended, but there are those of us that would. So I just think,
it's a good point. And an example, just two things I want to flag on this. If you notice here, it says Facebook user. That's because if you're in the physio and therapist support group, of which me and Lucy are esteemed and important administrators of course, but Gemma Oliver's a group, good friend of ours. And anyway, if you're on there and you haven't clicked the link in the comments that then gives permission to say who it is, then unfortunately that's why it says as Facebook user. It isn't me dehumanizing you to Facebook user. It's the system, I promise. But it says on the note about being called a girl, I don't mind it. I use the term all the time. I suppose it depends on context, which is I suppose that's what you're saying, isn't it? Is that fundamentally it is relevant as to the circumstance in which it's been done. And then on this, I imagine is the same person. On the other hand, I've had it shouted, "Get that fucking woman off the pitch," which of course is far worse than the casual use of girls. So the context is everything in this instance, I imagine.
Yeah, totally.
Some other great points here. One that I wanted to flag from our mutual friend Leanne. Sorry, I can't help myself. You see, I've got so Leanne's talking, so we're going purple again. By nature, we hang with people that are like us, might represent us. That proportion of people is not necessarily representative. So Jack, your mates might back you. But that might not be across the board. So she's I mean, this is what's amusing, is that somehow I've managed to masquerade as somehow a decent person to you, to Leanne, and to others. But no, me and my mates are the scumbags of which you're right to critique. And so I don't think it's just that. But thank you. And I hope, hopefully I keep good company. And certainly I'm only jesting in suggesting that any of my mates would be of the worst parts of those behaviours. However, generally speaking, I also hope I keep my finger fairly close to the pulse of what it is. Especially, I'm not from backgrounds of which I'm then much into the prim and proper, although maybe that is representative as well. Obviously, these things transcend all sorts of different other categories and classes. One of the questions that's come in, Lucy, I'll just try and scroll up to find it, is... Oh yeah, well, a reflection. There might be a question in there somewhere, but it's not funny to be called the slap and tickle girl by male medical colleagues on serious ward round discussion, and hope these days have gone. That's from Jenny Archer, clearly reflecting on the past. But also, when I saw that, I also thought about, I'm sure there's a question elsewhere, I can't find it, about bucket and sponge woman, and other just sort of generally like mixing social and professional slurs almost to demean. That's something that generally can be just again, like people using phrases as a means of just trying to knock people's confidence, and that's exactly counter to what you were trying to promote, isn't it? It's that lifting confidence piece.
And there was a post on the physio support group about podcasts, as you know, and when I saw all the replies to that, I contacted a lot of the people the women that had and men actually who'd commented, and they then sent me in personal messages lots of anecdotes similar to the sort of thing that Jenny's just shared. My plan was somehow to put them all together and to create something. I have got so much information now that I am struggling to know where to start. So if anyone has any ideas, I know that hopefully there'll be people watching this that might have some ideas of how I could put those things together. And because I want to give them justice, that these are people that want their voices heard, albeit anonymously. And I'm struggling to know where to start with it, apart from just plonking it all on a massive blog, which is what I might
like misogynistic word cloud with girl in the middle of it, and that, all these other little like petty slurs around it. I think as far as broadcast goes, hopefully there's a hunger for it. I can see the comments. We're never going to be able to get to them all, and we've got to wrap up now. But ideally, if you've enjoyed what you've seen, and if Lucy will give any more of her time, then I imagine that we could weave that into a broadcast. I know I'd love to have that, and similarly, you could guest host that. With others, it'd be great to get stuck into it, and we could put them up as captions, and even if people were willing to, they could come forward if they wanted to tell their own story, which of course would be brilliant, but equally no expectation, and we'll appropriately anonymize it. But yeah, if this conversation and having those watershed moments whereby we can expose it so that we can not make those mistakes again, if they are of history, but if there are current mistakes being made, then we need to talk it out. Even in areas of which there's interesting discussion to be had, of which this obviously we're never going to cover enough ground in half an hour for us to cover all of it.
And I think that one of the things that was a overwhelming response was, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I'm not alone. And knowing that I'm not alone in these feelings and experiences in itself makes me feel more confident. Like there's nothing like feeling understood, like we know with our patients, there's nothing like feeling understood to there's, as a human, there's nothing like it. So I think that that's really important. If I can somehow share all of these experiences and opinions, then hopefully that gives other people the confidence that they're not crazy, these things are real. And then in itself, somehow, I don't understand the psychology of it, but it can make us more likely to feel confident to then put ourselves forward for other things. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry about the technical issues at the start. We've gone a few minutes over just to try and account for that, but let's wrap up there. We were never going to cover it all in half an hour, but we've done as best to just introduce the topic. And please do, if you haven't already, then watch Lucy's video, which is attached to the description wherever you might be listening to this, and join Leanne on tomorrow's show. I don't know what she's got in store for us, but that's her takeover as guest host of Chewing It Over, second Tuesday of every month. And thank you, Lucy, for being as upfront as you have been on this and exposing us to important issues on International Women's Day.
Thank you very much for having me, Jack. It was great, really good, and I look forward to continuing the conversation for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not going to brave it and put a video up, so me and Lucy, I'm going to press